Jacob,
How you doing?
good. How are you?
Baruch Hashem. You got a haircut.
I got a beard cut.
You got a beard cut. Uh-huh. Do you cut your beard yourself?
I do. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
all by myself.
All
Well,
by yourself. You're so grown up.
I'm such an adult.
Yeah.
Even though I feel like it'll be a more adult move to get your beard fixed up, not by yourself.
I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Maybe. Maybe. Maybe.
But
Feeling better?
hmm?
You're feeling better?
I'm feeling better. Yeah.
Baruch Hashem.
We had some stuff, but now everything's okay.
Okay. Things being okay is good.
How everything things been with you? I think I haven't even gotten to finish the Talmud stream 2.0,
Uh-huh.
the second one.
Well,
Halfway through.
you're getting another week off
Okay, good.
because um Daniel Shalom has been traveling a lot, so he's going to be traveling this week too. Uh, to Yesterday, but this week I started my hopefully final semester quarter of classes for my master's degree.
Wow.
Exciting, kind of.
So, Shatova.
B'sha'a tova. We'll see how that goes. Yeah, so just keeping busy, trying to figure things out,
Mm-hmm.
trying to not let life overwhelm things.
Yeah. If you keep moving, it's good. I feel like.
Be'ezrat Hashem, which reminds me, how's the little tyke doing?
He's good.
The
He's good.
little tyke. Does he say Abba yet?
No, I try.
Uh-huh.
There's no response. There's just a stare.
Abba is pretty. Yeah, it's one of the first things they usually.
I think, yeah, it looks like it should be.
Abba, Ima. Yeah.
If I was dad, I could maybe have already claimed something because he does say dada,
He goes Dada.
but
Well,
we've
you can
never
do
heard
that.
that term before. So I don't
So
think
you've decided you're going to be Abba, and your wife, she's going to be Ima, or what's
it's probably gonna be more mommy, but she's
mommy?
gonna be both. But for me, yeah, I mostly it's mostly Abba.
Abba. Okay. I had decided I was going to be Dod Yaakov to my nephews, and my nephew Ben, who just turned 22, has decided he, like, every once in a while he calls me Dod just to humor me, because for the past 22 years he certainly did not.
So it's always uncle or something. Yeah?
No, so my sister calls me Behzad, which is my Persian name.
Okay.
So they all called me Behzad. In the past 30 years, I have maybe introduced myself as Behzad to a couple of people because they only know me from the family.
Yeah.
Still here? Did you lose me?
I lost you for a sec.
Okay.
How do you say dod? How do you say dod in Persian?
So in Farsi, there's a different dod depending on whether it's you're on your mother's side or you're on your father's side.
Okay.
So
on your father, I'm trying to think if I've ever heard. I'm trying to see if I heard.
On your father's side, it's Amu, and on your mother's side, it's Dai. Yeah.
I don't know.
So supposedly I should have been Dai, but even Dai,
Close.
I didn't
Close
get. Yeah, closer than Amu, certainly. Yeah. Yeah, it's weird in Farsi. So it's on your mother's side, it's Dai, and Khale is your aunt, and on your father's side, it's Amme and Amu. Amu is your uncle, and Amme is your aunt. So I don't know how Dai and Khale are related. They don't seem related to me at all.
Right. I mean, Amu seemed a little bit closer.
Yeah, Amu and Ame. Yeah, that seems. Although, yeah. Anyway, back to Mesilat Yesharim. Was it your turn or my turn? I forgot.
I don't really know. I can take it. Might be my turn.
Okay, it's all you.
Okay. Let's do it. I think we're like about to end the 13th chapter. So
Well, we will find out.
אך הפרישות הרע הוא כדרך השכלים אשר לא די שאינם לוקחים מהעולם מה שאין להם הכרח בו. So the bad kind of separating yourself from people, from things, is the way that the
Fools
sounds better. Yeah, I was about to say stupid people, but fools maybe sounds a little better. The fools do it, which for them is not only that they do not take from the world what is essential to them, אלא שכבר יימנעו מעצמם גם את המוכרח. They also, so there's a difference here, so that maybe we can need to flesh out. They also remove from themselves what is essential to them. Okay, so I used essential the first time. So can you show that again, the sentence? So they don't take from the world what there is not essential to them, but is optional or expedient. But they also remove or separate themselves from what is essential. Sorry. ויסרו גופם בייסורים, and they put their body through torment or affliction. ודברים זרים אשר לא חפץ בהם השם כלל. And foreign experiences and things that God did not intend for them at all. אלא אדרבה, חכמים אמרו. It's the opposite, like our sages said in the Talmud, in Tanit. Asur la'adam she'esagef atzmo. It is forbidden for a person to afflict himself, to flagellate, and not flagellate? How do you say
Yeah.
Flagellate?
It's not just flagellation. Flagellation literally means to hit yourself.
Hit yourself physically.
But yeah, sigufim are, taking ice baths and stuff like that, all kinds of tormenting yourself. Yeah.
Right. So it's forbidden for a person to do this. Ubinyan tzedakah, and in connection to tzedakah, to charity, they said in Talmud Yerushalmi, כל מי שצריך ליטול ואינו נותן, הרי זה שופך דמים. Whoever needs to give charity, whoever needs to take and does not take, he is like he spilled blood.
Like he's a murderer.
He's a murderer. וכן אמרו בתענית, and they also said in תענית, לנפש חיה, a living soul, נשמה שנתתי בך, אחיה אותה. The soul that I gave you, I am assuming God says, enliven it, give it life. ואמרו, they also said in תענית, כל היושב בתענית נקרא חוטא. Whoever is in a fast is called a sinner. ועמידוע בדלה מצה מצער נפשי.
והמידוה בדלה מצה מצער נפשי. And they accounted him among those who, I'm not sure. Let's see, what do they say? Which they qualified as being in the case where a person is unable to withstand it. Vehemiduha, they said this, right? This was regarding bedela matze mitzar nafshe, from someone who can't cause himself to withstand it. Yeah. Okay.
Right. I'm trying. I'm trying to think because also recently I've. Where was this? I think I read the Rambam's. I guess this has to be in Pirkei Avot. Like he has a long comment note on his Pirush, his commentary on the Pirkei Avot. He has a long comment on note on receiving money for teaching Torah.
Mm.
And he gives an example. He says, we know of a lot of our sages that lived in poverty in their time. So we can assume that they it's not like the people around them couldn't give them charity or they didn't take what they maybe had to take,
Mm-hmm.
but they did their work, and the rest they did Torah, right? They studied, they taught Torah, they studied Torah,
Mm-hmm.
but they had their work that they did. But I'm trying to think because I mean I guess this whole thing needs to be somehow constrained, or there's a lot of context here because there's examples, right, about so many people that are afflicted or not or maybe afflict themselves or that live in poverty. So how can that be so if this is what he's saying?
So, I mean, again, within here, even he talks about the various opinions, and ultimately, I think he says what is right, which is you have to understand the particular situation. There's two different things to consider,
Yeah.
which is one, that you should in fact have this idea of preshut, have this idea of separating yourself from the world and testing yourself and strengthening yourself. At the same time, there's in many ways it can go wrong, and finding that perfect balance is a very difficult thing. But when it comes down to it, like, there are very few things in life where it's, I mean, if it was simple, if there was an easy answer, we wouldn't be discussing it and we wouldn't be reading a book about it.
Right. Okay. Cool. Continue. V'hillel היה אומר, and Hillel was said in Proverbs. Interesting. Why does he say Proverbs?
I think he quoted Proverbs and then it
Okay.
explains.
So Hillel said, maybe quoting Proverbs, Gomel nafsho ish chesed על אכילת הבוקר. והיה רוחץ פניו וידיו לכבוד קונו. So a person redeems his soul by washing his hands, or by eating food in the morning and washing his hands for his maker. So I think what he's saying is like you take care of your body so that your soul is comfortable, and you do this for your maker. Kal v'chomer midyukanot amelachim. I'm not sure. Let's see. I don't know if I actually got this right.
Yeah. Would apply the verse, the pious man does good to his own soul, right? Gomel nafsho ish chased, to eating the morning meal. He would also wash his face and hands in honor of his maker, inferring from the practice of washing the statues of kings.
Interesting. Okay, so I mean, yeah, so it is kind of like how I interpreted it, where
he's understanding that you have to take care of yourself.
Yeah, you have to take care of yourself because you were given a soul, which is a chelek, right? Which is a chelek and a piece of God, or is a reflection of God, right? B'tselem Elohim. Yeah. So just like you clean the portrait, in your living room of the monarch, I guess if you're Canadian or British, then you want to clean. Then you want to clean yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess people used to have statues of kings all over the place. Okay.
Okay. הרי לך הכלל אמיתי. So here is the true principle. שכל מה שאינו מוכח לאדם בענייני העולם הזה, ראוי לו שיפרוש מהם. That everything that is not essential for man in the matters of this world, it is appropriate for him to separate himself from it. וכל מה שהוא מוכרח לו, מאיזה טעם שיהיה לו, כיוון שהוא מוכרח לו, and everything that a person is that a person needs for whatever reason that he might need it for. It's interesting that he kind of emphasizes it. אם הוא פורש ממנו, הרי זה חוטא. If he separated himself from this, he is a sinner. I think the reason that he kind of like redundantly repeats himself, but I think maybe the reason is because for each person it's different. So it's not that there's a thing that's essential for all people. Some people need different things. I had this discussion with my friend, he was buying a car. It's like, do I need a fast car? Do I need a car with a lot of room? But what if I have kids? I need more room. So I need a bigger car. And it's like not the same, but I didn't used to maybe need more. Like, so it's for each person you do have, but you have different things that are essential for you or that are needed for you. And it's so important to be true to yourself.
This is generally the klal with all things of Torah, right? You have to apply what is applicable in your circumstance, right? So people who read, for example, Maimonides at the very beginning says, yeah, if you live in a time where people aren't doing things as they should, you should go out and live in the desert, right? And it's like, well, like, does that like he didn't go live in the desert, and there were certainly a lot of problems in the society with in which he was living, right? And in fact, we've never actually seen very often at all. I can't even think of an example of like a righteous rabbi who decided, okay, I have to flee to the desert, right? So you have to realize, okay, each thing applies in the situations to which it applies to, and it doesn't apply to the places it doesn't apply to, and you can't take the Torah concepts the way a fundamentalist would.
Yeah, it's such an important principle. I was just reading by Sachs, and he was talking, I think he called it, I won't be able to articulate it, but he called it, he has something that he called sequential imagination, maybe. But he was talking about this, and we gone through this in the book club, the old book club, where we were reading his book, and a lot of people had, and I keep remembering that a lot of people always had a problem with, there was a hang up when we were discussing how there are two things that we're talking about, and they both kind of conflict. And for people, that paradox seems like this can't be right. Like, how can we talk about? So he was talking about how this in Judaism, in some way, the concept of the middle, or I forget, the contradiction, does not necessarily not doesn't exist, but it gets resolved, or this is how you deal with things. Where right. I remember we were talking about it, you mentioned it as well, that the answer doesn't negate the question, right? I think that's related to that too, but there is something there that is very important, and part of it, I think, that's hard for people. One reason is that we keep talking about these things as revelatory, as given from God, as given as something that is given from the outside. But then we flip it and we say, yes, but also you need to contextualize it here. Like, you need to take this and then you need to make it your own.
Yeah.
And also, I feel like people have a
Look, there's a reason, like people, Young God says it's a pretty sophisticated system, thumbs up. There's a reason why people are constantly making fun of rabbinic Judaism for being too complex. And, asking a rabbi that would cross it, asking a question that would cross a rabbi's eyes, right? From Fiddler on the Roof, right?
yeah,
It's because life is complicated and we recognize that.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I do understand. I do understand a point in that in terms of the complexity, or I mean, we can assume maybe there is right. There's over bureaucracy to an extent because maybe of how old the system is. So I can make the Chezi point here, or really, I mean, I've seen it in different circles of like, yes, there is some part of it that it might be true that there's complexity that maybe shouldn't be there, or there are like multiple things to consider that maybe should not be there ideally. But having said that, I think for me, it's such a beautiful resolution to something where it gives you both things. It gives you the fact that you have such a general concept that you can deal with, that you can have, that applies to so much and gives you so much predictive power, let's call it. And at the same time, you have control over how you apply it to your life. You can take it on, and you don't feel you can feel agency, right? Because you have to actually deal with it and apply it.
Our dearest RJ says, I heard a story about the mystical rabbi in Svat who went to live in a cave. When he emerged from the cave and the Romans were gone, or something like that.
I was gonna mention that.
The story of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son.
I think it's interesting because there he goes to the cave for whatever he goes for the cave because he's hiding, right? But I think the end is actually interesting because God tells him to go back to the cave, not because it's good for him, but because he does it because it's good.
He doesn't want him to destroy the world. Okay, so now we have to tell this story. It's a famous story, especially since we're between Lag BaOmer and Shavuot.
Yeah.
Famous story. During the time of the Romans, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son were hiding from the Romans, the Roman persecution. And was it 12 years they spent in the cave?
12, yeah, 12, 7.
Something like that. And there was a carob tree and water, and that was the only thing that they had to eat and drink, and that's why we eat carobs on Lag BaOmer. And they, after the time, they came out, and they were so infused with holiness. So the idea is that was the time in which they actually learned the Zohar, right, and composed the Zohar. And they came out, they were so infused with spirituality. Whenever they saw people dealing with worldly things, like fire spouted out of their eyes, and they would cause things to burst out in flames.
Mm-hmm.
And God or an angel says to them, I did not create you to destroy my world, and made them go back into the cave for another 7 years or 12 years or whatever it was. And next time they came out, they saw a man. It was Friday afternoon, and they saw a man carrying 2 hadassim for Shabbat, myrtles.
Right, in a wheelbarrow or something, right? Just like going around.
I thought it was 2 hadassim in his hand, but maybe it was a wheelbarrow.
I have an image of him like in a. I don't know why you need a wheelbarrow for
2 myrtles. No,
right. Still, it's an image, just like
okay. And then they understood that the world was created to be lived in, and no longer did fire shoot out of their eyes and destroy and make things burst into flames. So that's the famous story of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and the cave. You can Google it, find it, read it, love it, live it. Okay.
Okay.
Weiter.
Weiter. הנה זה כלל נאמן. And here is a reliable principle. אך משפט הפרטים, על פי הכלל הזה, אינו מסור, אלא על שיקול הדעת, ולפי שכלו יהולל איש. So this is a reliable principle. It works. But the judgment of the details of how to apply this principle is not fixed, but it is according to the shikul hadat, to the weighing of the intellect of the intellect of the person. I'm trying to think about how to.
Shikul hadat means consideration.
Consideration.
Like thinking of both sides, weighing a situation.
Mm-hmm. Of a person, and according to this, to the intellect, according to this weighing of the situation, a person will be
praised.
כי אי אפשר לקבץ כל הפרטים, כי רבים הם, because we cannot put together all of the details of these principles that you can apply this here and apply this here and apply that there, because there are too many. It's a combinatorial explosion. ואין שכל האדם יכול להקיף על כולם.
שכל האדם.
ואין שכל האדם יכול להקיף על כולם. And it's impossible for the mind of a person to be able to capture, to encircle all this information. אלא דבר בעיתו. But you need to think about each thing at its appropriate time.
Yeah. Wow. We finished the whole chapter.
Yeah.
That was quick.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Chapter 14. Chelkei haprishut. So the parts of prishut, of separation, asceticism. Chelkei haprishut harashiim shlosha. So there are three primary parts to asceticism. Kihine yesh prishut bahanaot. There is asceticism regarding enjoyment. Prishut bedinim. Asceticism regarding laws. I don't know what that means. Prishut baminhagim. And asceticism regarding customs. Yeah, related to laws and related to the conducts. Okay. Haprishut bahanaot. So asceticism regarding pleasure. Hu ma shehizkarnu beperek hakodem. It's what we talked about in the previous chapter, the hainu, that is to say. Shelo lakachat midivrei haolam ela ma shehatzorech yachriach. That a person should only take from the world that which he is forced to through necessity. ודבר זה יקיף על כל מה שהוא תענוג לאחד מן החושים. And this encompasses anything that is enjoyable to one of the senses. והיינו, and that is to say, במאכלות, with food, בבעילות, with a drink, במלבושים, with dress, בטיולים, with voyages or traveling, בשמיעות, listening, וכל כיוצא בזה, and anything like it. רק בימים שהעונג בהם מצווה. But that is only when the enjoyment of them is a commandment of God. V'haprishut bedinim, and regarding laws, the asceticism, hu lahachmir bahem tamid, that is to always be very careful with them. Lachush afilu ledivrei yachid b'machloket in ta'amo nireh. So even to try to always be careful, even if there is there is one particular rabbi who has a particular opinion, if it seems like his opinion makes sense, right? Afilu she'ein halacha kamoto, even let's say, for example, L'divrei hakol, right? You don't have to eat meat that is halak, right? But since it is the Beit Yosef, so a lot of people eat galat meat, right? She'ein halacha kamoto, uvetanai shelo yihyeh chumro kulo. And that he has to be careful that this isn't a place where astringency brings to a leniency.
How could a stringency bring a leniency?
It happens a lot. So, for example, let's say with regards to Chalak Beit Yosef, right? So, if for example there's no kosher meat around, then you don't have to eat meat on a chag, right? But generally, we believe that a person should have meat on a chag, right? So you could, through that stringency of what is kosher meat, come to a leniency of not having to eat meat. I mean, especially if you don't like meat, right? So that, like, I have certainly heard vegetarian Orthodox Jews make all sorts of excuses for why we're like being a vegetarian is actually being very machmir on being on kosher and stuff like that. And ultimately, when you have a lot of leniencies and stringencies, it's easy to find a way to get the result that you want. So that's something you have to be careful about.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it sounds familiar in the sense that he's saying that if you make something so difficult, then what then happens is that people take that difficulty and say, well, if I can't do it, then I might not be involved. I might go like a separate way, right?
Yeah.
I might not do it at all or something. It won't
Yeah,
take
I mean, when you deal with chumras and kulas, it becomes a thing where sometimes it becomes very clear that a stringency is actually a leniency. I guess the classic example would be Rav Moshe Feinstein was very machmir on reform and conservative weddings, saying that they don't count as Jewish weddings at all, right? But the effect of that was that they also didn't need divorces, which meant that it was far less problematic, because a lot of reform and conservative people would not get divorces and stuff, and that causes all kinds of problems of eshet ish and mamzer.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really a stringency which ultimately became a leniency.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. ולהחמיר בספקות אפילו במקום שאפשר להקל בהם, and to be stringent when there's a doubt, even in places where it's possible to be lenient. כבר בארו לנו חכמינו ז"ל, and our sages already explained it to us, מאמר יחזקאל, that which Ezekiel said, in the tractate Chulin, Hine nafshi lo metum'a shelo achalti mibehema shehora ba'haham. Behold, my soul has not become impure because I have not eaten an animal that a sage said, I guess, that it wasn't kosher. V'lo achalti mebasar kos, and I have not eaten of the flesh of cup. What? Okay,
Yeah.
let's see what it says. Behold, my soul never became spiritual and clean, for I never ate the flesh of an animal which a sage was called to rule on. Oh, okay. So even that there was a question. Nor did I ever eat the flesh of an animal about which one says, slaughter it urgently. That it might have died or become sick. I see. Vehine, kol ze mutar hu min hadin vadai. Both of these are things which are allowed, right? Ela ihu da achmir anafshe, but it was him who was stringent upon himself. Uchvar zacharti lamala she'ein lilmod mima shehutar al kol Israel. And I explained above that a person should not just say because something is allowed to everyone, right? La prushim sheyesh lahem laharchik min hakiur umin hadome lo umin hadome ladome. And that's not the same for somebody who is set apart, that they should set themselves further away from the visage, I guess. What do they mean by the kiur?
Kiur is like
repulsive.
Repulsiveness, yeah. Or
yeah, something
ugly.
that is ugly. Okay. And something that is close to it, and something that is close to being close to it. Okay. Achen Amar Mar Ukba. Mar Ukba said, Ana Bahai Milta. I, regarding this thing, Chala Bar Chamra Legabe Abba. Something about his dad?
Ay, Milta. Sounds familiar. I don't know.
I am as vinegar derived from wine.
Compared to my
father. Yeah. Chala bar chamra. Chamra being wine. Okay. The ilu abba kad achal bisra ha'idna. That if father had eaten meat today, la have achal gvina ad lamachar. That he would not eat dairy products until tomorrow, ki hashta, at this time, so 24 hours. Ve'ana behai seudata la achalna beseudata achriti achalna, and I don't eat it in this. I don't eat them in the same meal. I wait one meal.
One meal, right? And this is what the Rambam derives: 6 hours or 3 hours. Yeah.
Ubavada she'ein pesak halacha kamo shehaya aviv oseh. And obviously, the halacha is not that you have to wait 24 hours. She'im lochen lo haya Mar Ukva oseh neged zeh. Mar Ukva himself would not do otherwise, right? If that's the halacha. Ela she'aviv machmir haya. But Prishuto, his father was somebody who was stringent, right, in being in setting himself apart. That's why he would call himself vinegar, son of wine. Because he was not as ascetic as his father was. And the asceticism regarding customs, hu behid bodedut vehibadel min hachevra, that is by standing alone and keeping oneself from the companionship hamedinim,
Medinit, from the maybe
hamedinit,
social, like public affairs,
I guess. Yeah. Well, Medina back then meant city.
city, but
Yeah.
still can be like the affairs of the city.
Yeah. לפנות ליבו אל העבודה וההתבוננות, to turn his heart towards the service of God and meditation upon it, כראוי, as it should be. ובתנאי שלא יטה גם בזה אל הקצה האחר. And the condition to that is that he, even in this, he should not go to the furthest end. Shekavar Amru Zal, that it's the exact same word, nifty, Medina, nice, I guess.
Medina is city.
Makkah and Medina, I guess. Okay. So Shekavar Amru Zal, that our sages said in Tractate Ketuvot, Le'olam tehed da'ato shel Adam me'orevet im ha-briot, that a person should always have his mind, he should have distributed cognition, right, with other people. V'chen amru makot, and they also said in Tractate Makot, Cherev el habadim v'no'alu, a sword upon the cloths. What?
He says upon the
a sword upon the boasters, and they shall become foolish. What did it say? Habadim v'no'alu. Cherev al sonehem shel talmidei chachamim. A sword should come to those who hate the sages. Sheyoshvim bad bevad v'oskim b'torah, who sit by themselves, one by one, and learn Torah. Guess it's not very good to sit and learn Torah by yourself. Ela yitchaber ha'adam im hatovim. A person should become friends with good people. Zman ma shemitzarech lo limudo o leparnasato, during the time that he needs for learning or to earn money. V'yitboded achar kach, and he should set himself apart afterwards, lehidabek be'elokav, to cling to his God, ve'lasig darchei hayosher, and to achieve the ways of righteousness, v'ha'avodah ha'amitit, and the true service of God.
It's interesting that in the sequence he says that you should do the things that are necessary to you and that are part of the public affairs, parnasa, or the money that you get, and then seclude yourself or separate yourself to do the work, right? So it's interesting. The first thing that you do is you deal with the things that are necessary. A little bit like in the morning, where he said, you wake up in the morning, you need to wash your hands, you need to eat something small, and then you do the work. So, well, it's interesting because when you read something like this, it sounds so tough and so out of worldly in a sense, that at least for me, when I'm listening to this, I have to keep in mind all the time all the other opinions of, like, yes, you should keep yourself out. You should be stringent, and you should separate yourself. But also, you have to make sure that that you do this in a way that is productive and reasonable and sustainable. And it's very tough to read this without considering that context. So
you should always read this in context.
Right. I mean, yes, and in the context that the Ramchal specifically has and assumes that the people that are reading this might have, right? Considering kind of like when he tells you to do something, he assumes that you know what looks like. He assumes that at least you have some sense of what is the two edges that you should not get near, right? Whether it's completely removing yourself or completely indulging yourself, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
ובכלל זה למעט בדיבורו ולהיזהר מן השיחה בטלה. And included in this rule is that a person should not talk too much. And he should keep from speaking worthless words. ושלא להסתכל חוץ מארבע אמותיו.
Stay in your lane, in so many words.
Yeah. וכל כיוצא בזה מן העניינים שהאדם מרגיל את עצמו, and similarly in all of the things that a person accustoms themselves to בהם, עד שנשארים לו בטבע אל תנועותיו, until they become natural in all of his actions. והנה שלושת החלקים האלה, in these three sections, על פי שאמרתים לך בכללים קצרים. And so I told them to you in short rules. הנך רואה שהם כוללים פעולות רבות. They include many different actions מפעולות האדם, from what a person does. וכבר אמרתי לך שהפרטים אי אפשר למסור כי אם לשיקול הדעת, right? I already told you that the particulars have to be considered by a person, weighed. להישיר אותם על יושר הכלל ואמיתו.
Right.
The person has to rectify them according to the straight way of the rule and its truth.
Right. So, still in Beishut, as we finish this one as well.
Yeah.
So he's kind of giving the caveat a little bit that I was talking about, where he tells you like there's no like the details here are like you need to apply the details here, but like we can't enumerate them and go over them. You need to be able to understand them and weigh them yourself. And it also reminded me, I don't know why. Maybe I saw something in the sentence, but again, kind of, I guess, emphasizing what we talked about with that principle of being able to take 2 points and synthesize them or bring them together. It kind of reminds me of the principle of lichatchila and b'diavad, right? There are so maybe the principle here is the lichatchila is the thing, or we can say maybe the ideal. In a sense, you have an ideal state. And then you have the b'diavad, which is the contextual, or okay, what do I do now when I'm in this particular situation? And I also think that
well, I mean, every situation, the fact is, it's b'diavad, right? Like ultimately, you have to realize where you personally are in your, you know. So, I mean, yes, we talked
without
about the
losing the
tefillah and the
ideal,
diavad, but
without losing the,
yeah,
there's still the striving towards a certain place. And
yeah,
the fact that you're in a b'diavad situation, in your specific situation, doesn't mean that it negates the fact that there is a place, a thing that you're moving towards.
yeah. So PVK was he tagged me in one of his long Twitter things because apparently a while back we were talking and I said, all these people who talk about monasticism, and there's a lot of people who talk about monasticism, right?
Mm-hmm.
They would never actually live a monastic life themselves, right? They're not living very monastic lives themselves. It's
Mm-hmm.
very hard, right? And PBK kind of in a sense wanted to be like, okay, this two-speed religion doesn't work. And I responded to him with a story of the Rebbe. A while back, there was a reform school that had moved the mezuzot from up on the door to further down so that the kids could reach up and kiss it as they walked by,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the Rebbe said, look, there's something you are teaching the child when you move the mezuzah down to his level, right? We want to reach up, right? And so there always has to be this action of reaching up towards something better. At the same time, we also have to keep in mind, and it goes back to what we were talking about from the very beginning, right? Like shikul hadat, you have to consider, you have to realize, you have to be like, okay, this is where I am, and you can't do it by yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's difficult. There's no easy answers to life's difficult questions.
Did I give you this example before? We might have gone through this when look, I had a conversation with a friend and the example that he gave, but
You have friends?
I have some
Mm-hmm.
still somehow. And he said the example that he gave is so might be a little bit of a straw man, but like okay, so we have a couple. We consider divorce to be something bad, right? A couple separating to be something bad. But you have a situation where the two people in the relationship are so at odds with each other, the relationship is so bad for them that the divorce can be a good thing, or is something that they have to do. So then, right, so you have lechatchila, you have the ideal situation is where the couple doesn't divorce, right? They don't separate. They live their life together. But then you're telling me that in certain cases where the relationship is so bad, divorce might be the right thing to do.
Yeah.
How does that? So the question is, how does that not negate the entire ideal? How does that not remove? If you're telling me this ideal is not applicable in all situation, how is it? How is it still an ideal in that sense?
What's the answer?
The answer that I can think of is that in some situation it might be better for you to separate yourself from that relationship, in order that maybe even with that person that will be a good thing. So then you can have a relationship that maybe it's not marriage, but you can still be friends or whatever. But also you give yourself the chance to have a sustainable relationship with somebody else. Maybe you need, I don't know. I mean, that can think a little bit more long term of like something like that. There might be a more
Tzarech shikul hadat.
right. Yeah. So that's why I said it's a little bit of a straw man, because I do feel like, yeah, if you apply a little bit of, you can think it through,
But
but
that's how all things are. I mean, I doubt you saw the big discussion we were having on Discord, right? But like
I think I'm
that, you know, somebody was asking, okay, so Maimonides says you should kill heretics, right? So
lechatchila.
lechatchila, yeah, you should kill heretics, lechatchila, right? But like, how come nobody does it, right? It's like
Yeah.
same thing by Shabbat, right? It's like every Mechalel Shabbat, you know,
Mhm.
but we don't do it, right?
Yeah.
Because the world, like, we live in this world,
Mhm.
and that's the thing about having a very complex system like we do, is that it's not just propositional, it's also procedural, and it's also perspectival,
Interesting.
and it's also participatory, right?
It's a good way to put it, right? Like, yeah, we get these prepositions, we get these propositions, and we think, and I mean, to be right, we call them, again, we call them revelation. We call them something that is, we give them such a massive place, these propositions, right? Aseret adibrot, like the 10 commandments, the 10 sayings. It sounds so strong,
Mm-hmm.
but then we also have the understanding that it is there is procedural, there's or really the experiential, I forgot the p for that, there's perspectival and participatory knowledge that needs to be applied to that,
Yeah.
and without that it's not a full, the concept itself is not fully baked.
The light bulb and Ari Shafir.
Well, I mean, I maybe I can understand what he's saying in terms of I see it in some. I'm sure that I do this in with certain things, but I do see in some things that people say.
Mm-hmm.
They say something and they don't necessarily, and there is it's called cognitive laziness that goes on where they don't really consider all the things. They just say it and then they think, right, like doesn't that, and then you just mentioned, yeah, but you can think through it like 2 steps forward and you will see that it resolves itself. And so, and I think that is reflective of motivation. Some people are not motivated to assume that something does resolve itself because they reject it. They come from a place of, they are motivated to reject it for whatever reason, or they're not motivated enough um, to actually do it. It reminds me of, and we can probably call it a day, but it reminds me of Rabbi Gottlieb talks about a person that went to the yeshiva to Sameach,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if you know this person, but he went and he studied for a while, and he was very good.
Mm-hmm.
But then he went to Rabbi Gottlieb and told him, "Listen, I have to leave. I have to leave because I know that if I stay for a little longer,
Mm-hmm.
I won't be able to eat cheeseburgers anymore. Because I know that I'll get, like, I know that I can see that I can understand why I'm not
Yeah.
supposed to eat a cheeseburger, and it's gonna make so much sense to me. But I really like cheeseburgers, so I don't wanna continue. Right. So it feels to me like that is, sometimes it's not about the shikul dat of like, yeah, of taking everything into consideration. Sometimes it's like I'm not motivated to take the extra step to actually consider all things.
I blame you on God.
I think he's a good scapegoat to have.
He is very much like Jesus. Yeah. Okay. I have a whole estuary meeting tonight.
Nice. So that means you have to travel.
Yep, all the way downstairs.
Okay.
Okay. I am going to end this stream.
Thank you, everybody.